Welcome to Season 4 of the Changing Earth podcast with Sara F. Hathaway, blending survival fiction and fact to bring you entertaining education that will help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sara F. Hathaway.
Hi, and welcome back to the Changing Earth podcast. This is episode number 134, Season 4, Episode 10. I got my audiobook giveaway going on right now. Great stuff going on over there. Ellen's always commenting on all my stuff. Thank you. Appreciate that. Already got Jason Henderson entered, and Nathan Carr has been over there commenting. So love your support. Love you guys. Thank you so much for getting involved and being a part of the contest. The contest will come to a close on February 13th. So head on over to Facebook, like that post, sign up to my newsletter, go over and subscribe to me on YouTube. Those are all some great ways to get entered, and basically all of those entries will go into a big hat. And if you go to multiple places and do that, I'm going to go ahead and put your name in multiple times. So I got a bunch of those codes to give away, and there'll definitely be a bunch of winners. So get on over there and get entered. It's going to be a lot of fun. I've been working on a secret project. I don't know if you follow me online or whatnot, but I've been really tied up, just been working my butt off on this secret project. So the secret project is I am taking Day After Disaster. I totally re-edited it. 90% of the story is the exact same story. I did work a little bit with the beginning just to add a little bit more excitement there. And so I totally re-edited that book. I'm going to be issuing it as a second edition. I also included 5 bonus chapters, which takes you into basically them going to the edge of the state line. And, it's stories that I told them without land, but it's walking you through it. So that was a lot of fun to put together. It was definitely a labor of love. It was very hard to go back and, dig into my first book that hard, but it really needed to be done. And it was definitely worth the time and energy. I can stand behind it now 100% with where my writing skills have advanced to. So that's a lot of fun. That's my secret project I've been working on. Right now it's at the editor. So I'll have that out probably the beginning of March. And then get signed up to my newsletter as soon as you can, because I'm going to be showing you how to get those 5 bonus chapters. Let's see, what else do we have going on? We have the Self-Reliance Expo coming up in March, so definitely looking forward to that. Been getting everything organized with that. So that's March 23rd and 24th, the Self-Reliance Expo, and that's out in Mesquite, Texas. I've got some big news to announce today. They already launched it February 1st, but Dale and Kevin that I have on today, and Brian, a bunch of those guys, they have put together the preparedness experience. And for checking the website out, it looks like it is going to be a blast, and just a lot of information there. So I encourage you to go check that out. We're going to talk with Kevin a little bit more about it in the interview later. So last week in Battle for the South, Master Sergeant Bennett and Dexter, they were gathering intelligence information and just kind of figuring out how are they going to put together the capture of Vince and Erica. So this week, we join Erica and Vince, and we're back in Texas, and they are headed down to Houston to help with hurricane relief. So that's a lot of fun to go through, always a great time. And Kevin Ryder is here. He is a wilderness medicine instructor, and Kevin was a blast to talk to. Really love getting to know him. Hopefully I'm going to get to see him down in Texas, but he is here today, and we're going to talk about staying safe during a hurricane, before, during, and after the hurricane. So that's a great interview coming up, lots of good information. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and listen to Chapter 10, Battle for the South. Chapter 10. In the morning, the whole compound was a buzz of action. People scrambling to pack supplies for the Houston residents that were sure to be displaced from the hurricane about to hit shore. Half of Houston was pretty much a flooded wasteland already from years of hurricanes pounding on it, but what was left was about to get wiped out. Erica was outside with Vince, helping to load a bus, when she heard commotion at the nearby gate to the compound. "Just shoot the thing," one man declared. "He seems friendly enough, and he has a collar. He's someone's pet," the other man chimed in. Erica was strangely curious and headed towards the gate. Vince watched her leaving out of the corner of his eye as he picked up another crate and headed towards the bus. Approaching the gate, Erica saw the cause of the commotion. "Trucker?" she called out loud in wonder. The men spun in surprise. The dog joyfully launched toward her. Petting him with praise, she looked around to see if her son was nearby. It had been a very long time since she left her children for any reason, and her heart ached to see them again. Not catching a glimpse of him, she would have to make do with his dog. As she sat down on the curb to pet the animal, she noticed that the dog's collar had a small leather envelope case sewed onto it. Upon opening it, she found a scrap of paper with a note. "Mom, Dad, Bennett is on your heels. He called me in to find you. We are in Old Austin. Are you going to get Grandma? Please tell me what is going on. All hell will break loose if you guys don't get back to the northern region. Love you, Dex." Smart kid, Erica thought to herself. She walked over to the guy with a clipboard and a pen. Vince was surprised to see her cross the expanse with Trucker and went to join her. "What the heck is he doing here?" Vince asked. "Dex sent him, with a note," Erica responded. "Smart kid," Vince said. "I thought the same thing," Erica chuckled, handing him the note. Erica asked the man if she could borrow his pen and a piece of paper. "What are you going to tell him?" Vince wondered. "You know he's with Bennett." "I know, but he's our son. We have to trust him. Maybe he can get to my mom first. Whether we get her or they do makes no difference if we can get her out of here and into the northern region," Erica responded. "I hadn't thought of it that way, but I still think you should be vague, just in case Bennett intercepts the note. Dex will be able to read between the lines," Vince added. They got the note secured on Trucker as they were being called to board the bus headed south. Outside the bus, the wind was whipping, and rain was thrust violently through the air. Inside the bus, it was cozy, with the heat of concerned people going to lend a hand to nearby communities in trouble. Erica was bombarded with questions about her past, California, and the meeting with the federal governing board. They cheered for her stories like she was a rock star, gracing them with her appearance. Vince watched his wife animatedly retell their past like it was a legend from another lifetime. She delicately led them up to suspenseful parts of the story and then exploded in action, telling the horrors of all they had been through. These were free people, protected by a state governing system that would not yield to federal involvement. They had fought their own fierce battles and had lost half the state, but they were untouched by the refugee system, thanks to the oil and chemicals they could supply. What was left of Houston was still a major hub of that activity. Without it, they questioned their ability to remain free. After hearing Erica's stories, it concerned them even more. Time passed quickly on their journey east, with the distraction of the real-life government defiers on the bus. Outside, the weather continued to turn foul. The bus swayed to avoid the flying debris that would halt their progress. The caravan was being led by semi-trucks with cow pushers on the front, clearing the debris from the road and ensuring there was a path for the fleet of buses headed to help. The energy swirled in the bus, and Erica was fueled by its fire. She was so excited to be amongst so many people whose only mission was to help others in need. Erica had never been to Houston before the Great Quake, but she guessed it was like many other cities, former shells of what they had once been. Thinking about natural disasters before the Great Quake, Erica reflected on the fact that if disaster struck, it had been a localized event. Fleets of supplies, millions of dollars, and tons of food would have been diverted to the disaster so the people wouldn't suffer. The Great Quake's damage had rippled the entire globe. Very few cities, towns, and neighborhoods were unaffected, and resources were needed everywhere. In retrospect, she saw how difficult this made any effort to return cities to their former glory. When the buses stopped, they continued to rock. Erica stepped off the bus, but the wind threatened the stability of every step she took. She grasped her sidearm as she steadied her balance. It felt good to be carrying it where it belonged. It had been too long since Erica had felt its comfort. She and Vince were assigned to a large group headed for the Houston Methodist West Hospital. Juan Gutierrez was assigned as the leader of their group. He was the assistant to the man in charge of the entire southern region, Ted Ferguson. Juan explained that after the Great Quake, there were 2 large parks by the hospital. They became tent cities as displaced residents of Houston made it their home. The city was already being frantically evacuated as the water threatened every escape route. Pretty soon the hurricane would be upon them, and the rescue teams would have to be clear by then. Otherwise, they would risk getting trapped themselves. People walked down the streets headed out on foot. They welcomed the caravans when they arrived. Erica watched trains with endless amounts of rail cars full of people pass by. The steam engines were pumping at full speed. The people headed to the caravan were met with open arms and given food and shelter immediately. The buses had parked in a formation that made a series of protective circles. Erica stood like a deer in the headlights, consumed with the amount of humanity and understanding that was being spread around the rescue effort. "The hospital is 2 miles down this road," Juan declared crisply in his Mexican accent. "We need to get the remaining patients and get back to these buses as quickly as possible." The rain poured down in bucket loads as they headed towards the hospital. Lights flickered as the power poles swayed. The roads filled with more water as they continued to trudge on. Glass sparkled through the air as debris torn from buildings hurled past them and shattered windows. "This is fucking crazy, Erica," Vince's voice cracked with the rush of adrenaline. Erica looked wild-eyed at him and nodded, but had no idea how to respond. Chaos was going to rip this city to shreds. How will we ever get them out in time, she wondered to herself. As they approached the hospital, they were in shock. Patients struggling to save themselves were scampering out the door. Juan and the rescuers rounded them up into the lobby so they could go get the patients that couldn't help themselves. That way they could move as a group to the caravan. The indoors was hardly a reprieve from the fierce storm that always seemed to grow more intense. The building itself moaned under the stress of the wind. The shattering windows let the rain in and carried shards of sparkling glass through the air. They continued on, through the halls of the hospital, opening doors and carrying people back to the lobby on stretchers. It was finally Vince and Erica's turn to load their stretcher. The occupant was a man who had a degenerative muscular disease. "Just leave me," he cried. "Save the others." "Sorry, sir, we were told to get you out, and that's what we're going to do," Vince replied. The weight of the stretcher was exhausting as they made their way down the hall. The building was no shelter from the wind now as it blasted through the broken windows. They passed Juan, who was doing a final sweep of every room and marking it so that no one else would search it. The lobby hummed with voices as Vince and Erica entered it with the man on the stretcher. People screamed as glass broke and debris flew in the open windows. "Grab whatever you can to shield yourselves," Erica ordered, noticing the lack of direction. Vince grabbed a piece of plexiglass that had become dislodged from the reception desk and shielded the head of the man who was on the stretcher. "We have to move, Erica. What's taking Juan so long?" he wondered out loud. Erica was sensing the same thing. "I'll go back for him," she blurted out. She turned to run down the hall, but Vince jerked her arm. "No, I will," he commanded. "You're better with people," he yelled back as he sprinted down the hall towards the stairs. Chaos reigns as the hurricane bears down on Vince and Erica. It's a crazy situation they're in, just trying to rescue people out. As I told you before, I wrote this scene about 3 months before the hurricane hit Houston, and I did a lot of research on what happens to cities when huge disaster strikes and things like that. Kind of what happens to the people when it's not like an immediate rebuild. You can't just return to your homes. And what I found was a lot of tent cities are erected, and they're usually erected around places like hospitals and main points of congregation, food areas, things like that. So that's why I really wanted to pinpoint the hospital situation and created a really cool story. Hurricanes are no fun to live through. We all saw the devastation that happened last year from hurricanes. And here to talk to us today about how to stay safe before, during, and after a hurricane is Kevin Reiter. Kevin is a wilderness survival instructor. He's had an avid interest in the outdoors since his father took him fishing at the age 3, and has continued to pursue many outdoor activities for over 45 years, such as hiking, camping, fishing, trapping, and hunting. While serving as a reconnaissance specialist in the U.S. military, he started his diving career and holds the certification of Dive Master and Master Scuba Diver with over 15 specialties. For most of his life, he has not only been continually learning, but has used that knowledge about nature and the outdoors to teach others. Kevin has taught members of search and rescue teams, participated in numerous SAR missions, given lectures on diving medicine at university hospitals, volunteered as an EMT and firefighter in his local community, served as an assistant scoutmaster with local Boy Scout troop, and actively participates in educational podcasts and videos for EMS providers and the preparedness community. In 2010, Kevin was certified by the National Board of Diving and Hyperbaric Medical Technology as Diver Medical Technician, DMT. At that time, he was one of less than 2,000 people to ever receive this certification in the United States. You can get a hold of Kevin at www.wildsafety.com. Let's go ahead and welcome Kevin to the show. Today we have a brand new guest on our show. His name is Kevin Ryder, and he is into wilderness survival medicine, which I absolutely love. And today we're talking about hurricane safety. So Kevin, why don't you go ahead and introduce to yourself to my audience and let everybody know what kind of cool projects you're working on.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah, for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. I've actually been listening to podcasts for a while. Haven't read the books yet, but they're on my list.
Well, right? Well, you get the books on the podcast, so that's kind of, a good trade-off too, right?
Yeah, I'm just so busy. I'm teaching wilderness medicine, and I'm running my own company, the Wilderness Safety Institute, teaching a whole bunch of classes. And if that wasn't busy enough, I just put a conference on for PrepperMed back in October in Denver, and that led to 3 other people and myself starting the Preparedness Experience, which is going to be a website, a blog. We're going to have interviews, and we're also going to have a conference. We're not sure if that's going to be once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year, but eventually that's going to be hopefully my full-time job.
That is so awesome. I'm looking forward to getting to one of those. Like I told you beforehand, I was doing my black belt test. I so wanted to be out in Denver, but, I was there on the floor getting my 2nd degree black belt then. So, but I
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, so much fun. Definitely a good time. But I love learning wilderness survival because I'm in the woods a lot and I'm very, very clumsy. So it's definitely right up my alley.
Well, so you'll have your chance because we're definitely adding you to our list of attendees and vendors. We want you there, and we're trying to promote authors, and you're definitely on our list.
Well, I'm just very, very honored. I've been working hard on my books. This is kind of a sneak peek. Not very many people know this one, but I guess I'm ready to announce it. Coming out in March. I am revamping the original book just so that it comes up to the writing style of my future books, but I'm also adding some bonus chapters in there, and it kind of will bridge the 2 stories together, those 9 missing years. So that's pretty exciting stuff that I'm working on right now.
Awesome.
Yeah, a lot of fun. So today we are talking about hurricane safety. I've got my crew, and they are headed down to Houston to help with the hurricane down there. So I know that a lot of my audience is going to be asking, did I write the hurricane story in Houston after the hurricane or before? And it was before, and it was very, very eerie. So I just got to put that out there that it was a little bit strange. I'm doing my editing going, oh my gosh, did I put this in the universe? It's kind of scary. So
you're not clairvoyant, are you?
Yeah, no, that's what everybody asks. I'm like, please, I hope not. I don't want to live my books, I'm good. So, Kevin, what's your kind of experiences with hurricanes and that? Where are you located, and what's kind of your past experiences there?
Well, I'm originally from the Northeast. I was born and raised in New Jersey, so hurricane season was an annual thing with us. And then I moved down here to Texas a little over 2 years ago, and I was here for the big one. I wasn't affected personally all that much, but I
Mhm.
have a lot of friends who lost a lot. I've also been on search and rescue and responded to incidents involving hurricanes and a whole bunch of other stuff. So uh, I've been around the block once or twice with the hurricane stuff, and even tornadoes. When I was in the military, we used to go chase them when I was in Fort Riley.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, you could say I've lived through one or two.
Yeah, I've been a little bit spoiled because I'm from Michigan. You know, we don't get hurricanes there. We get a lot of ice. We get some big thunderstorms. And then, out here in California, you get kind of spoiled. I'm in the foothills, so we're right above the fog, right below the snow, and our
Mhm.
weather just sits pretty tight. They're like, "Oh my gosh, a huge storm coming up," and then one chair blows over, and we're like, "Wow, that was one heck of a storm," you know. So I've got to say, I get a little bit spoiled, but my in-laws are down in Texas. Lots of people that I love are down in Texas, and so for that to happen, it was a little bit scary. What should we do as personal individuals to prepare ahead of time if a hurricane's headed our way?
Well, I think the first thing to do is pay attention to the weather reports and listen to any guidance that is put out by local agencies. If they say to get ready to evacuate, listen to them. It's better safe than sorry. If it winds up being nothing, you're alive, you have everything. But a lot of times we see people who want to say, no, I have enough supplies, I'll be fine. And they're the ones that people hurt trying to get to rescue them
Mm-hmm.
once everything kind of happens and they realize they weren't as prepared as they should. So I think the first thing to keep in mind is pay attention to the weather reports and actually listen to them. Um, because even though it's extremely difficult to guess what's going to happen, they have a pretty good idea, a lot better than us. We just
Right?
listen to the weather. They go to school and they learn about it. Um, so listen to what they say. Another thing is gonna be prepared. I'm sure your audience is well familiar with that, but have you know some food to last you through. It used to be the 72-hour was the preparedness window we would tell everybody. Now it's more like a week. You want to
Right.
have enough water, enough food, and the little things can go a long way. Comfort items that people don't think about, first aid supplies, toilet paper, any prescription medication. Um, think about what you use in your daily life and have that for about a week, and plan what you would do if or when. So if you do have to evacuate, have everything kind of pre-planned the best that you can, and that way you won't be as panicked when the time comes if you do have to evacuate. It'll be like, okay, no problem. We're gonna grab this and go here, and okay, we're good to go. You won't be panicking.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's true. We had a wildfire creep up the back of our hillside, and my husband started freaking out, and it was like, hey, I've been I've been preparing for this for a long time. I know exactly what we need to grab, and so it was good to have that cooler head, even amidst all the chaos of the family going nuts. I was like, just do this, do this, do this, and we got out pretty quick, less than
awesome.
10 minutes to evacuate a family of four. So I kind of wear that badge with pride. I'm like, yep, less than 10 minutes, got my whole family, two dogs out, and everything we loved pretty much with it.
That's
So
awesome.
it does. It goes a long way to just be ready and know, like, so we had the Oroville Dam incident out here where the dam was going to burst and, people had to evacuate. The evacuation routes were absolutely just clogged like you couldn't believe. So you need to
Mhm.
not only know like your major routes out, but like all those little side streets, little things you could take to just avoid, the traffic. Or is it going to be smarter to just wait and sit, which is going to actually be faster because some of those side streets got worse than the major routes.
Right, and that's one thing that should
Hmm.
go into your planning. I mean, you have to expect that everybody else will be leaving too.
Right.
And if your only route is a major highway, you need to anticipate that's going to be clogged, and you may need another route.
Yep.
So try and plan a backup to all of your plans, and every backup should have its own backup.
Right. Yeah. And then I think water sometimes gets overlooked. Like water is a pretty essential, and yeah, there's going to be a lot falling out of the sky, but that water is super dangerous. So
Hmm.
having the proper amount of water on hand is probably going to be your most important prep, I would think, in that situation.
Right. And my big thing is always training. So even if you don't have the water with you, at least have the knowledge and ability and everything you need to process water to be
Yes.
potable.
Yeah, don't think that you can just drink it out of the flood region there. It's not going to be good. Not going to be good.
No, 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 no.
That was during Katrina. There was people out on the roofs fishing, for fish, and I'm like, I don't know if I'd want to eat that fish out of there. I mean, are you that hard up? Has it really been that long since you haven't eaten?
Well, people get desperate and they think they're doing the right thing. They just don't realize, hey, all the chemicals and now the oil and gasoline and diesel and everything else that's in the water, maybe that wouldn't be the best choice. But if you have nothing else and you're that desperate, I mean, people are going to do.
Yep, what they're going to do. So, Kevin, when it comes to preparing water and making it safe to drink, what methods do you recommend we use when we're in those types of situations?
Well, it depends on what you have at hand. If you have water filters, commercial filters, if you don't, you can always boil, which is my preferred method. If you can start a fire, if you have something to put the water in. But first you have to filter it. You have to get all the flock, as it's called, out, all the clumpy stuff, which is what all the protozoa and parasites and everything cling to. So you want to filter that out first, and a bandana works great, a coffee filter, a t-shirt, anything you have to get to separate the clumps from the water. And then you can either boil it, you can use chemicals, you can use a SteriPen, you can use any number of the commercial water filters available or water purifiers available.
So, so with the filters, I've become a little bit leery of them, especially in this kind of situation, because there's so many chemical contaminants that could possibly be in the water. And, they're good at getting out microbes and stuff like that, but what about these chemical contaminants?
So here's the deal. So you can use multiple different methods. I typically have a Cat 9 Hyper Pro that I use. And first I'll fill my water jugs with that. And then I'll bring them back to camp and then I'll boil them just to make sure that anything that might have gotten missed by the filter, I'm going to get it with boiling. Now, neither one of those methods work against chemicals or trace minerals. You're going to get the majority of it out. That's going to hurt you immediately. Like you're not going to get what's called beaver fever or giardosis from Giardia. You're not going to get Legionella disease. You're not going to get all the big things. So if you happen to get some chemicals, and even prior to that, locating a water source, you want to look for something that may have the least amount of potential to have any additional chemicals like gasoline or diesel fuel or whatever may be in there. So, pick the spot you want to collect it from, give it some thought, and then process the water. And if you want to use multiple methods, you want to use a SteriPen, using UV light, and then you want to put it through a filter and then boil it, whatever floats your boat, no pun intended. It's water, so you go until you think it's filtered enough to where you're not going to get sick.
Yeah, and so you're instead of just scooping up the flood water, you could maybe locate a tap or something that's still working, that's at a elevation you can reach, that's not underwater, right? And then collect from there. There's still a possibility that the pipes and stuff have been contaminated at that point, but you're going to reduce the risk a lot.
Right. I mean, anything is possible, right? But anything we can do to reduce the risk is what we want to do that if we're at all able to. And most times you're still able to find somewhere that has a pretty low risk or lower than average. You're never going to find perfectly pure water unless desalination. You could probably do that, but that's still not going to be 100%.
Right, there's still those chemical contaminants. Yeah.
Right. Well, desalination removes a lot of those too, but the act of building a desalinator
Yeah.
Not everyone knows how to do it. You may not have all the parts. It takes time. You may be on the move, so that isn't very feasible because you have to stop what you're doing, plan for a couple of days to get everything set up and go through the process. If you're on the move, I just like collecting water, and when I'm able to stop, then process it when I'm able to, and then take it from there.
Yeah, so I would lean towards like the evaporation is probably not going to be effective because you're in clouds and rain, storm around you. It's not going to work, right? And
Right.
even being able to do a distillation is going to be hard. So would in the boiling process, would it be better to capture that steam and drink that instead, or just drink the boiled water? And you're only there for a few days, so right? It's
Personally,
not
what
like
I
it's a
would
long
do
term.
is I would pass it through my filter, maybe add some MT1 tablets, and then boil it after that. And that's three steps.
Yeah.
And that's going to remove most of the things. I mean, and the water we drink now has an acceptable level of all this stuff anyway.
Right.
So if we can do what we can to minimize or mitigate as much risk as possible, we're never going to have perfectly pure drinking water. There's always going to be something in it somehow during whatever process you use. So what's acceptable to you? That's what it boils down to.
Yep. And, it comes down to how long are you going to be in that circumstance? You survive the day because you drink the water, and then, you're out of that circumstance and you don't have to worry about it anymore. That's only like how much did you actually ingest? Now, if you're living there long term, if it's a long-term SHTF situation and your city is now flooded, you might, set up something that's more of a permanent type water management system.
True, and keep in mind that some things involving water can take a while to even show up. You may not realize that, hey, I ingested, whatever it was, because the incubation period can be, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
You need to think about it. Yeah, you need to think about, okay, how do I trust this water source? What can I do to mitigate the risks? And you know what? Maybe getting sick in a few weeks, everything will be blown over, and I can go to the doctor and get a magical pill and fix me up, all good to go.
Right.
And maybe to me, that's acceptable risk.
Yeah, because at least now it can be handled instead of I need to survive the day, like right now, and then we'll worry about all that later, right? Yeah. So,
exactly.
Okay. Anything special? Like anything, just an oddity? Like, should you have a blow up raft, or just anything crazy like that you would recommend a hurricane area that you probably wouldn't suggest people to stock? I don't know, in like a tornado area or something like that.
Long pants, long sleeve shirts. If you happen to need to walk through water that's say knee high, if you happen to get a cut because your leg brushed up against something and it broke skin, all those contaminants can now enter your bloodstream and make you sick. So by having an initial layer of protection, being a pair of jeans or hip boots or waders or whatever you happen to have available, again, it all goes down to mitigating risk. So if you have a layer of protection, that'll hopefully stop, some initial things happening and keep you going.
Yeah. I saw one lady like getting pulled out on one of those blow up swans. And I'm like, maybe a boat would have been better. I don't know. So
whatever you happen to have, if it works, use it.
Right?
I mean, that's pretty much it.
Do the best you can with what you got. Okay,
and if it works, it's stupid. It's not stupid.
So you've decided you're going to hunker down for the hurricane, right? You're going to just stay there, or they didn't tell you need to evacuate and it pulled a different course. And so you're now sheltering in place for the hurricane. What should we do during the hurricane?
During the hurricane, you want to stay away from open windows, or from windows in particular. If the wind picks up and blows something into your window, you don't want to get cut by the glass, obviously. If you're going to stay in place, try and have an open line of communications to let people know that you're okay or where you are, what your plan is. So they're not worried about what happened to you. They can't get a hold of you during, the the really bad time of the hurricane. Let people know, hey, we're going to be here. We're going to try and ride it out. We'll call you back every day at noon or every 4 hours. If you don't hear from us, wait until the very next one. And if you still don't hear from us, then something either bad has happened or we just don't have communications. But communicate with people who are outside the area. Let them know what's going on, what your plan is.
What do you think's the most secure way to do that? I'm just talking as far as like what method of communication kind of dies last? Is it our cell phones, our internet connection? Like what do you think? Depends on your area, maybe?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the area and the infrastructure in the area. If you have no cell phone service, sometimes you can still have text messaging.
Right.
So if you can text people back and forth, even if you only have one bar or no bars, a lot of times texting will still go through.
Okay.
Yeah. If you want to spend the money or you have spent the money and you want to get a sat phone or even rent a sat phone, that's an option too. But basically, whatever works. Think about all the different possibilities. A lot of it depends on the area you're in, the infrastructure that's in place. Some places like the Northeast, they're used to getting hammered, so they have a pretty good infrastructure as far as working phones and internet, not so much, but phones typically hold up pretty well.
Lines, like the hard lines.
I'm actually cell phones. Sometimes
Okay.
because the phone lines to the house, if a tree falls down and takes out all the lines on a utility pole, there goes your cable TV, your internet, and your home phone line.
Yeah.
But cell phone towers in the Northeast typically hold up pretty good, and there's so many of them. Even if one is unavailable, you probably can still hit 4 or 5 of them.
Okay.
So again, it depends on your area, the infrastructure. But and don't wait until a hurricane or disaster comes. Try and think about this ahead of time and maybe do some research and some testing. Hey, what happens if the phone goes dead? Well, turn your phone off and think about how would you get a hold of somebody.
Right.
Can you walk to their house? Can you get your vehicle and drive? There's a lot of different options.
Establishing that line of communication is going to be essential. Everybody worries about you. And you're right. A lot of times, especially for us, like up here in the mountains, we won't have the cell phone connection, but we still have enough bars to send out a text message. So we can be like,
right.
We're at the 3rd tree next to the pond, and we can still find each other. So that does work fairly well. I've also seen like an antenna that you can attach to your cell phone to turn it into more of a satellite phone. So that might be like GoTenna or something like that. I haven't looked.
Well, what it does is it extends the range of your cell phone and it magnifies whatever signal that it can receive from the tower.
Okay.
And there's lots of different manufacturers. Some of them, the good ones, aren't really cheap, but they're not overly expensive. I've used a couple in the past, and some work better than others. One thing to keep in mind, if you can send a text message, you can be found by the towers. When I was in search and rescue, we used to get the carriers to ping the person's phone from the tower and to tell us where they were. And that works out really well. So in the event where nobody can contact you, by keeping your phone on and maybe you send a random text to somebody just to have some activity, if they're looking for you, they can hopefully they have a better chance of pinging your cell phone and getting an accurate location with your cell phone on. So have the external rechargeable battery packs. So if you have no power, at least try and keep your cell phone charged. So if nothing else, you can at least send a couple text messages. Hey, we're okay, or hey, send help.
Okay. How do those things hold up if they get wet, those external battery packs? So you got to Ziploc it, make sure it doesn't get wet?
I would double Ziploc it. Yeah, I mean, it's a big battery with electricity, so you don't want to keep it away from water. So I typically double Ziploc it.
You'll be getting a buzz every time you walk down. That'd be fun. keep you aware at least.
That'll definitely keep you awake.
All right, so we're away from windows. We've established a clear line of communication. Higher ground. When do you go? Like only when the flood comes in, do you go to higher ground? Other than that, you'd rather be sheltered, or how does that work out?
Again, it's one of those things that it depends on your environment, your locale. If you have a house that's in the middle of the city, and you know, hey, every time it rains, the water comes up to our front door, and now you're getting a hurricane, you may want to anticipate, losing the first floor or maybe the entire house. Right. So that all goes back to the planning and the evacuation. So if you do shelter in place, you have to think about, hey, maybe we want to, get ready in case we have to evacuate the first floor, if you do have more than one floor. But the best way is not to be there to begin with. So by following the evacuation plan and the guidance, you want to get out of there. If you stay there, you run the risk of anything and everything happening. So if you can think of every single possibility and plan for it, you're a lot better than me.
Right.
And I did this for a living for a long time. Yeah, I did this for a living for a long time. And every time we got called out, something new would happen. Like, oh, I haven't seen that one before. That's something for the books. So it depends. If you live in an apartment house, do you live in a condo? Do you live in your own house? Is it a one-story? Is it a two-story? Do you have a basement? How close are your neighbors? Are there any hills in the area? Is everything flat?
Is a basement, do you want to go to a basement in a hurricane? I wouldn't.
Not really. I mean,
I'd be
it all
freaked
depends.
out. Right, it's true.
If you have a really big tree next to your house and when it's strong enough, and I've seen
true.
where the tree gets blown right into your house, that may be the only secure place left in the house to retreat to.
That's true.
So you have to, again, think of all the possibilities where you live and what your environment is. If you don't have any trees, and anywhere near to where you live, that probably is not, chances are low that's going to happen. But if you live, in the Catskill Mountains in New York, where there's trees every 5 inches, now you have a bigger probability of that happening. So it all depends on what your environment is, where you live, and a whole lot of other things that are unique to your situation, and you have to plan accordingly.
Probably be planning for the power to be out.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I would count on losing would be power. So what do I have to mitigate that? Do I have any spare batteries for my phone? Do I have any, do I have a stock of batteries to run whatever I need to run, my GPS, my phone, any light source, the AM, FM, a light source, a weather radio. And those are pretty cool because you can even get those. You can hand crank them. Yeah, exactly. So think if the power goes out, what do you need? And then again, it all goes into that pre-planning. What do you need to get ready?
Yeah. Did you have a friend's house in a different state you could have been at? Right? Get out of there ahead of time.
I've seen that happen. In fact, my aunt, when the hurricane hit Florida, she took her 2 dogs and went up to, where did she go? She went to just north of Louisiana. I mean, they went really far, and they missed everything.
Yeah, I have a bunch of friends that live in Florida now, from Michigan. And so they just all went back up states to, friends' houses and things up there where they could ride the storm out without worrying about it at all. So it's kind of probably what I mean,
my aunt was going to stay there, and she talked to my mother, and my mother's still in New Jersey, and she's like, "Are you crazy? Get out of there. Yeah. Grab your dogs and go."
Right.
She put in the car and left, and it's a good thing. Yeah. It's a good thing she did because that whole area that she was in was underwater for a couple of days.
And, that's a benefit of the hurricane in the world that we live in right now is we can see them coming. We can give warning about it. You can choose to be the stubborn one who stays or the one who goes, yep, let's just, get out of here and figure it out later. So
it's always better to play it safe and leave. Not everyone who was bunkered in place was in trouble. But I've seen a lot of people who got stuck and think, oh, that won't happen to me. One of my most favorite sayings is graveyards are full of people who have said that can never happen to me.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, I have a 17-and-a-half-year-old son, so I'm like, you are not invisible. Be careful.
Yeah. It can happen. It does. It happens every day. So I'd rather, pack up my ego along with all of my other stuff,
right?
And drive a couple hours and take it as a little mini vacation, and wait it out and then go back.
Okay, so how about after? So whether you ride the hurricane out someplace else or you bunker in place, I would assume pretty much you're doing the same thing afterwards, which would be damage assessment, right?
Right. So is the water potable? Do they have a boil order on?
Yeah.
Do you have to worry about mold? Any repairs that you have to have done? And a lot of what I've seen is that's where the community is really big in helping out everybody. Mm-hmm. Just one more benefit of having other people, not just you, but having all your neighbors and the whole community gets together and helps out. Hey, we all got nailed. Let's hurry up and bang all this out so everyone is back online a lot quicker.
What are some of the potential dangers, like, leaving your house for the first time afterwards because you decided to stay in? What should you be most alerted to when you're doing that?
Well, again, it depends on where you are. And one thing I forgot to mention before, depending on the state you're in, and if there is a disaster declared by the government, you may want to leave with any firearms you have, because some of the states who are not as 2A friendly as, say, Texas or Arizona, if you leave your firearms, that can be a crime. If your house gets looted and your firearms get stolen, sometimes you only have a 24-hour period to report them. Well, if you're gone for a week, and then that firearm gets used in a crime, you could be, facing some charges. Obviously, you have to get a lawyer and fight it. That's going to cost you money on top of everything else you've been through. Is it worth it? Probably not. So if you do have firearms, try and bring them with you. Again, it depends on the state you're in, the state you're going to. So if you have to travel to a different state, you need to know the firearms laws in that state, how to travel with them. If you have a license or permit to conceal carry, or
is it valid in another state?
Exactly, and not all states honor other states. If you live in a state like, for example, Maryland or New Jersey or even New York, you may have some serious problems. If you live in Texas or Louisiana, probably won't have any problems at all. But you don't want to, create an issue by leaving stuff behind that you didn't think about. So again, goes back to that planning. I need to make sure that, hey, if we leave, we're going to cross into, Pennsylvania, and we need to make sure that they're all in the trunk and unloaded and all that good stuff, so we're good to go. It's, if you know beforehand, it's a piece of cake.
Yeah, that is a good heads up, a definite planning consideration, I think for us here, if we had to go into Nevada, we'd be better off than we are in California. So
probably
I think we're all good. The Iron Curtain, So
yeah,
pretty much. Well, as long as you don't go north with them, I think Oregon's a little. I don't know. I don't think
Oregon's kind of weird too.
Yeah, they're kind of weird too. So just heading east would be good. But yeah, that's definitely a consideration, because like you say, if you leave them in your house gets looted and those firearms are stolen. Well, not only does it suck that all your guns were stolen, but now you got all this to handle, and then you're dealing with, your guns.
Yeah, you have a knock on your plywood door from Mr. Police Officer saying, we'd like to see your firearm. What firearm? You have a XYZ model so-and-so. We would like to see it. You go to
look for it. Yeah.
And it's gone. We go, well, that was used in a crime, so it's still in your name. Well, it was stolen. Well, why didn't you report it? I didn't know. Well, that's not really an excuse.
Yep.
So now you
It's
have
not.
that to deal with. So yeah, mold. Mold is a big problem. I have friends in Louisiana. They spent weeks and months, gutting the house because the mold was so bad that made the house unlivable. So
Yeah,
now you
yeah, you
have to
can
live
get
in a
that black
hotel or
mold
a
in there.
frame.
That's super nasty.
Exactly. So what are your plans for once you get back doing all the overhaul? You may have to
Yes.
live in a hotel for, a
And you
period of
better
time
be very
while you
familiar
build.
with your insurance policy because there's all
Exactly. I was
kinds
just
of
going to bring that up.
interesting things, yep, that get written into there on what's covered and what's not. Was it groundwater movement versus you left the sink on when you left? There's all kinds of
Reimbursable
different.
expenses.
Yes. Yeah, because I worked in the insurance industry for a while, and there's all kinds of things written in there. So it's important to sit down with somebody who knows about your policy and like can actually talk to you about what is covered and what is not. So that's a big deal.
Exactly.
hmm
And
And
that doesn't pertain just to floods, but wildfire, as you know, in California,
yep,
hurricanes,
earthquake.
tornadoes. Yep.
Earthquakes aren't typically covered under your traditional insurance policy. You have to have like a separate flood is usually not
Mm-hmm.
covered under your traditional
Yep.
insurance policy. You have to have a separate policy for it. So there's all kinds of
Yep.
things like that
But that's
catch
all part of
people.
that pre-planning.
Yeah. And then people that are renting, it really saddens me that, all my apartment burned down and we lost all our stuff. Renters insurance is so inexpensive.
I think I
And
pay $100 for my base policy, and I have a couple of what they call riders, and I
right?
think I
Yeah,
pay an additional $20 a year for all of that. So $120 a year, and
yes.
my stuff is more than covered.
Right, and it covers it worldwide. So like even if
Yep.
it's in your car or whatever. So it's just such a shame. And a lot of times you get like discounts on your other policies and stuff. And I'm like, man, if people were just more aware that this is so inexpensive, so easy to get.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's less than a pizza a month to make sure your
Yep.
stuff is covered. So I mean, that's just ridiculous. So anybody who's out there
Mm-hmm.
renting doesn't have insurance, man. You just you get spanked with the silly stick.
Costs
So,
$100 a year.
yeah, right. It's really, really inexpensive. So, and if you do any kind
Another
of
thing
traveling,
is
it's worth it.
right. Another little tip is any of your valuables, take pictures of them
Yes.
and upload them to a cloud storage, whether it be Dropbox or Google Drive or anything like that, because in case if you lose your phone, you can still access them from a computer. And if the insurance company wants proof of anything that you did own this, you can provide photographic proof, and usually that's good to go.
It's true. And especially on things that they have like an itemized list for, because a lot of times on like firearms or jewelry or things like that, they're going to put a cap on the amount of coverage that you have for that. That's why you have those little riders. And
Exactly.
yeah, so those types of things are extremely essential to keep track of that you had them at the house. So.
Right. And with me, all my training equipment, I have pictures of everything,
Yeah.
including serial numbers of firearms. I have a spreadsheet that lives in the cloud. So anytime, if anything ever happens, as long as I can get to the internet, I can provide everything I need to just that extra step of, whew, okay, I'm covered.
Yeah, at least it's there. And that's not a bad
Yep.
idea either for, I don't know about storing it in the cloud, but having, birth certificates, marriage license, social security cards, things like that. I wouldn't store it on the cloud, but I have an envelope ready to go. And then I also have copies at a friend's house that's out of state. So,
Mm-hmm.
if I lost all of my documents, my dad has them in a different state. So it's that backup security, because you don't have your insurance policy anymore. You're not at your house. How do you get a hold of that information? How do they prove
Right.
who you are without your documentation? So those
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things are essential for pre-planning as well. Yeah, because
And
it
again, in
matters
those things I have,
afterwards.
right. And like I tell my students in some of the classes I teach, birth certificate, deed to your house, any insurance
Yep.
policies you have on paper, put them, double Ziploc bag them. If
Yeah.
you have them in a safe, Is a safe fireproof? What's the fire rating on it? It won't do any good if safe isn't rated for fire and everything melts inside of it. That won't do any good. But if you're in a hurry to go and you include this in your pre-planning, you grab that bag with all of your important documents, put it in your purse or put it in your vehicle or put it in your backpack, and now that's one less thing you've got to worry about when you come back.
Yeah. And having all of that ahead of time, like I say, it just helps you breathe easier when you're leaving. You're like, okay, this is the most horrific, distraught thing that I've ever done. I'm looking at losing every bit of personal property that I own,
Mm-hmm.
but at least you have those coverages. At least you have, your mind secure enough that you can be like, okay, I know what's important. I know what needs to go out. And that's all the best we can do. So we know exactly what to do. It helps you just get through that moment because it really hits you like a ton of bricks. It is scary.
It does. It's just an added peace of mind.
Yep. Yeah, because your mind's just going crazy. I got to worry about my kids. Now your kids are freaking out. They're all scared of what's going on. So it's definitely just a good idea. It helps put everybody at ease. So how about, I was thinking like down power lines, like when you're walking out the door, man, that would be freaking me out. The thought that there could just be like down power lines everywhere and things like that. So, or like a tree that's about to fall, maybe your house, like even, your awning or something like that. So I don't know how often people are injured from the aftermath when they're like emerging from their residence,
Well, it goes into situational awareness. You have to look up. When I'm teaching my wilderness classes, I always tell my students, look up. It's not just left, right, forward, and back. It's up. There's a thing called a widowmaker. And a widowmaker, for those of you who don't know, it's a dead limb on a tree. And people who set up camp or they set up their tent or their sleeping bag under a tree, and at night there's a windstorm, and that big limb falls down and kills you. That's why it's called a widowmaker.
Yeah.
That does happen. So always look up. And if something doesn't look right, go a different way. Or if it looks kind of sketchy, I would say, you know what? It's not worth taking that risk. It's not worth chancing it. I'll walk, 10 feet out of the way just in case.
Right. And then wait till the proper equipment can come in to take care of it.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, the widow makers are what we harvest all over our property. We have a lot of scrub oaks and woodpeckers. Yep. So they do a fine job of making a lot of widow makers all over. So we're really familiar. Another thing that taught me that was I was at the zoo one time. We're watching the black bears. They're all rescue animals at this zoo that we go to. And this bear was like 60 feet up in the air. And I'm going, you know
black
what,
bear.
when you're walking through, black bear. When you're walking through the woods, you would have no idea that there was a bear like 60 feet up above you if you didn't take the time to look up and check those trees, Are there mountain lions chilling there? What's going on kind of thing. You can't just assume that, like you say, it's front, back, left, right, because it's a whole new world out there. So
always look up.
Yes, I would be very leery of it. How about if you're like flooded in? So say you stayed, you got flooded in, you're now sitting on your roof kind of thing. What's the best way to kind of like get a rescue's attention if they're around? Do they fly helicopters over the top kind of thing? And then I don't really know how that works.
So there's a number of different methods for signaling. The one that sticks in my mind is a signal mirror. Now that does rely on having a bright day and sun, but that works really well because a signal mirror, you can actually signal somebody miles away with a signal mirror.
Can you use a flashlight to do the same thing? Shine it at your mirror?
No, it doesn't. It peters out pretty quick. It doesn't go nearly as far as reflecting sunlight.
Okay.
I actually did a class years ago where we demonstrated that. It was around midnight. There was absolutely no stars in the sky, and we tried with a flashlight. Actually, we tried with multiple different flashlights. I even have an 800 lumen flashlight that I carry in my pocket, and that went about the farthest, but it really didn't go all that far.
Okay.
So a signal mirror, again, if you have sunlight to use it with, it works great. You can signal pilots, pretty much anybody. And if they're flying rescue missions, they're going to be flying low enough to see you if you're on your roof.
Mm-hmm.
They may not, get you right away, but count on them calling in your location so other people know where you are, because they're going to hit the people who are most in danger first.
Okay.
It's not just like, I saw you first, I'm going to get you. They're
Right.
going to get the people who are in the most distress as possible, and then come back and if you're sitting there with a barbecue or fishing on your roof,
Yeah.
you're doing pretty good.
Right.
They're going to get the people who are, the elderly, or the people who have small children. They're going to be the priority for the rescue. You're going to have to wait because you're okay for the most part. But count on them calling in your location, the number in your party. If you want to take time and learn some hand signals, there are international signals you can learn to signal people in a plane or a helicopter, say, hey, we're okay, or send help now. We have a hurt person in our party, or whatever.
Hurt. That's what I was going to
but
ask
that way
you.
you can at least communicate.
Is there some kind of mark that like you could put on your roof? Like say it was still raining or something, you wanted to stay inside, but you want them to know you were in there. Is there anything that you could do? Is it best to just have somebody out there?
Well, actually, if you take a CERT class, you will learn the signals as a CERT person. If you ever get activated to do CERT is a number of notches down from a search and rescue team, but you learn a lot of different skills, and part of it is you learn how to mark a building if you searched it. So if you know what those marks are, and it's a combination between those, and if you get on the internet and just Google or search whatever your favorite search engine is, the international rescue symbols, like 3 sticks up and down, or an arrow, we're okay, send help, need medical attention, need food or water, we went that way, we're okay. Those you can put on your roof, spray paint. And that, again, part of your pre-planning. If you had to do that, do you have a can of fluorescent orange spray paint? If you don't, you might want to include that.
Uh-huh.
So there's a lot of different ways you can use for signaling, but again, it all goes back to that pre-planning and what you have, what you need to do that. If you don't, you should include that in your preparation.
Yeah, I'm on the waiting list right now to get some of that CERT training done. So small community, so we have to wait till we have enough interest in the area to host one. So that's where I'm at with
you
that.
You can actually
right
go
now.
online and you can download the material for free. If you just look for a CERT handbook, you can download. It's a number of PDFs. FEMA provides them for free. Anybody can download them. You can at least go through and they have all the information in that material, so you can actually learn before you go to class.
Yeah, I can teach it to my group that I work with. So yeah,
exactly.
Beautiful.
And I'll send you some links on that for your show notes.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great because at least that gives us some place to get started. I'm just big into getting people thinking about it. Okay, so you think you're all tough, you're gonna hunker in. Do you know if you do get stuck, like what to do then? Are you just gonna wing it from there? Is that really the smartest thing to do then, or should you have left? Right? Are you capable of helping other people that stayed behind? So, if you're staying behind, you're going to be the tough guy. Well, then are you going to really do it? Are you only half heart in here? I'm just doing this for myself. Or are you like prepared to, anybody else who stayed behind, I'm trained, qualified to go and help them out as well. So that's a whole different set of circumstances then. So, if you're going to stay there, you might as well make yourself a use and know what the heck you're doing.
Right, and it wouldn't hurt to take like a basic first aid class, not just CPR, but basic first aid. Even some of the advanced first aid classes are only, I think the one I taught years ago was 15 hours. So it was 1 or 2 nights a week and then like a Saturday. and it goes so much beyond the basic first aid, and you're giving up 2 nights and a Saturday, and usually you get pizza out of it and have fun. But get some training. Training is really cheap.
Even the
it doesn't
EMT,
take a whole lot of time.
even the EMT training course that I did was a couple nights a week for a semester of school. I mean, that's cheesy. So going down and doing that is not a big deal for anybody to, really handle. And it's worth it. I realized I didn't want to do it as my career, but I was sure glad to have that training under my belt to know what to do if somebody around me needed me, So it's definitely, like you say, it's peace of mind. It's like mitigate the risk and then provide yourself peace of mind so you can handle it easily.
Exactly. And depending on where you live and what state you live in, EMT courses range from free. With the contingency, you join a volunteer squad, and either they or the state will pay for it, or some states go as high as $1,500. But again, that's, to you, is that something that's worth it or not?
Right.
So you got to think about, hey, if I'm giving up time. Time doesn't cost me anything. And it can take a few months. Great.
And if you're a member of a group, if you've got a survival group going, and you send a couple people from your group down there, and they go and do it together. It's a fun event. Now they're trained for your group and can also bring that knowledge back to everybody in the group. So, you could do it as a group investment. We do a lot of that. Exactly.
And then, there's all kinds of training. I mean, a lot of the what I call the essential outdoor skills. Other people call them survival skills. I just think they're essential for everyone to know.
I know.
How to build a quick shelter, how to start a fire.
Yeah.
How to carry somebody out of the woods, if they get hurt. Just basic little things like that. They're not expensive at all.
Yeah.
And
people
you can
don't
do
realize
most of them in a weekend.
One tarp, and you can make a pretty nice shelter to keep you dry. I mean, that's all it takes. So, there's really no excuse for I couldn't afford to do something. Like, no, everybody can. It's really easy once you know how to do it. And you got to go out and practice it.
And one of the classes I do, it's over a weekend, and you get the whole shelter building and water filtration, purification, fire starting, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's fun. You make a shelter, you sleep in that shelter that night. So it's not just making a shelter and then moving on. You actually get to sleep in it to learn, hey, I did this wrong, or I need to pay more attention on securing this roof to make it waterproof because it leaked on me all night. And that was
That
so you
was
get
not
the
awesome.
experience with the training. Right. And it's a fun weekend. And, so training, I'm a really big advocate for training. Not just in the medical, but for anything you're going to do, anything that could help. Training is never a bad thing.
At all. Yeah, you can learn a ton of stuff, but until you put it to practice, you don't know. And that's really what happened to me with EMT. I was going to go do ski patrol, so I took the EMT class. Oh, this is cool. This is fun. And then I was selling rafting photos for this company. And it was a really hot day. And so all the girls were out in their cutoffs and their bikini tops, and we had the misters blowing on us, And this guy comes by on his motorcycle. His jaw just drops to the pavement, and he wrecked his bike across the road. And it was like, I know what to do. I knew how to help him and everything, but it was so scary. I didn't want to have somebody else's life in my hand. Luckily, the fire department, was right there. And that was the moment when I went, you know what? I learned this, but I have not practiced it enough, with somebody who knows what they're doing. I haven't practiced it with them enough to feel confident. And B, I'm not sure I want to do this. You know what I'm saying? I was like, this might not be my cup of tea. And so you can
definitely
learn
not
all
for
you
everybody.
Want. Yeah. Yeah. You can learn all you want, but until you put it into practice, and you don't know what really is your role going to be in your survival group or in your group or so.
Exactly, and that's why I advocate training with an actual instructor who has experience, and not just with me, but for anybody. You can take any class you want. But if you get the training, for example, in my courses, I tell people how to practice once they leave the course.
Right.
So you have me for the weekend, and now you can go back and this is how you can do it on your own with your family or your friends, but to practice, because if you don't practice or even think about it, those skills are going to go away. And when it comes time to use them, you're going to think, uh-oh, what did I do here? What was it? How do I do this? I forgot. That class was 6 months ago, and I can't remember, along with everything else going on.
Right.
But if you practice it, 5 minutes a month, that goes a long way.
Not everything is like riding a bike. You can't just pick it
Right.
back up. It's true.
Exactly.
So, and that's why it's cool if you can find like a group of like-minded people around you that you actually get to practice with. And even if it's your family,
Right.
that's fine. But it's good the bigger groups are a lot of fun to work with. I've been having a lot of fun with it. So I encourage everybody to go and start finding out about those opportunities.
And if
Alrighty,
nothing
Kevin.
else, just driving back and forth to work, just thinking about what would I do if.
Yeah, exactly.
That plays
That's
a
how
big
Day
part,
After
too.
Disaster got written. So
Awesome.
yeah. Alrighty, Kevin. Well, I think we went through all the ins and outs. I'm sure we'll get off the line and then think of a ton more things that we could have said. So if you got anything more, send it through to me and I'll put it up in the blog for everybody. But why don't you just go ahead, remind people where they can find you at and, why they should get a hold of you. And you'll be back on in August, I believe. So we'll get to touch base again then.
Awesome. Well, people can find me at my company, the Wilderness Safety Institute, at wildsafety.com, and there's links to all of my social media there. They can also find me, now that we've already had the launch, at the preparednessexperience.com, where they can find more of me. And anybody wants to give me a call or email, I'm always open for questions. You can find me on Facebook. I'm in a whole bunch of different groups, or just shoot me an instant message. Any kind of questions you have. I love answering questions. I don't live for it, but I love doing it. And I will be emailing you a whole bunch of links to put up with your show notes for all the FEMA stuff and training and all kinds of stuff. And again, thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you for coming. Like I say, I'm just excited to be able to get my listener that hands-on training, and you're definitely the man that's out there making it happen. So thank you for your efforts on that level.
No, thank you. I'm trying. Haven't got everybody yet, but I'm working on it.
It just takes those, the few people that can get out there and make it happen, and then we can start really making prepared communities and more people that are thinking about, how do I survive these little hiccups? And it's not just natural disasters. It can be personal disasters. And anytime you can just hedge, like you say, hedge that risk, you're going to be better off in the long run. So I appreciate that and I admire that about you.
Thanks. And it's usually the little things that get you, not the big things.
Right? Exactly. All right, Kevin. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thanks again for having me.
We'll talk to you later.
Awesome. Thanks, sir.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Kevin, so much for coming on the show. It was a lot of fun to do, and I can't wait to have you back later in the season. We're going to have lots of good stuff to talk about because preparednessexperience.com is just launching. Looks like a great new project that these guys are putting together, and they are going to be sharing a lot of information and doing a lot of hands-on training as well. So really looking forward to that project and seeing where it goes. So that's www.thepreparednessexperience.com. Also want to remind you about the audiobook giveaway. Get on over to Facebook, sign up to my newsletter, head on over to YouTube, and subscribe to me. And I'm going to throw your name in for that giveaway. I got a bunch of those codes to give away. And want to remind you about the Self-Reliance Expo coming up March 23rd, 24th in Mesquite, Texas. And don't forget to head on over to forwardobserver.com and check out all of Mike's wonderful information. I'm telling you, I love his podcast. It's become a new daily ritual for me to just kind of get my feed on what's going on because, the media is just so jumbled. You just don't know what to believe. And, Mike really lays out a lot of ideas on community organization, community awareness, and just being aware of your tactical environment, which is very, very interesting for me, kind of a new realm. So I'm really learning there, digging, doing that. So head on over to forwardobserver.com, sign up for Mike's programs, If you use my name, SARA, as a coupon code, you'll go ahead and get a 10% discount over there. So that's good stuff. Well, that's all I got for you guys today. Looking forward to next week. We are going to be having a killer show with Dr. Bones is back on the show. So love having him on the show. Great medical information. You know, I've got a wide diversity this year of different medical tidbits and things. But Dr. Bones always brings great information. And also, Dr. Bones is going to be joining me down at the Self-Reliance Expo. So if you want to meet him in person, Dr. Joe Alton, he'll be down there on the survival panel. And I'm really excited to get the opportunity to meet him. So that's next week on the show. And definitely going to have more of Battle for the South. But until then, remember, dream, survive, thrive.
Thank you for joining Sara for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster, Without Land, The Walls of Freedom, and Battle for the South at www.author.sarafhathaway.com. If you love Sara's books and this podcast, please head over to Amazon or iTunes and let everyone know by leaving a review.